Thank you. So maybe we can start while Bianca is joining. So welcome everyone to this new Grow webinar, and the first in this new year. So this webinar is going to be devoted to statistical literacy and citizen data. So this Grow webinar and the Grow webinars, this is an initiative organized by GIST, by the Global Network of Institutions for Statistical Training, headed by Elena Prodan. Elena is also here. She's going also to participate and to be active during this webinar, and also by the task team on statistical literacy that is led by me and by Bianca Walsh. So thank you. Let me just shortly introduce the two speakers that we have for today. So we will start with Juliette Villa. So Juliette is a technical director of the National Statistical Office of Colombia. And then we will have Al Kags. Al is the founding director and executive director at the Open Institute of Africa. That is a very well-known institution. So I'm going to open the floor. So maybe if you want to say something about yourselves, please do it. So we have about 20 minutes for each speaker. So the whole webinar will last for, well, a little bit less than 1 hour now. And so we also intend to have time for questions and answers. And I will give the floor to you, Juliette. Thank you. And let me just thank you again for being here. I think, Elena, I don't know if you want to say something before.
Yeah.
Or just after.
I think I was supposed a little bit to set the stage since I prepared for that.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, no worries. I'll, yes. Yes. So very quickly, because the main focus are country presentations, but just to sort of frame the discussion today. Oh, sorry, I'll go to the top of my presentation. Yeah. So I'm very excited about this webinar also personally, and I would like to say a few words about that. Why? I have also a personal story where statistical literacy and citizen data came together in the work that I was doing on the Crowd for SDG project, where initially we started it as a citizen data project, organizing and running competitions for young people around the world who would form groups and then would work on data challenges relevant for SDG monitoring. And very soon we realized that the coaching was very important also when it comes to statistical literacy and data literacy. And so at a global level, we have these two initiatives. Today you are participating in a webinar that is led by the Global Network of Institutions for Statistical Training. As Pedro mentioned, I am currently the chair of this network, but the secretariat is being provided by UN Statistics Division. And then within this network, we have this task team on statistical literacy. At the same time, there is another global level initiative called Collaborative on Citizen Data that is a bit more recent. The network, global network GIST, was created in 2017. Collaborative is from 2023. And Collaborative is working on citizen data. And today, this webinar, it's really about coming together of these two streams of work that are extremely complementary and synergetic. And we'll hear about country examples, in fact. But before that, just very quickly, for those of you who are more from citizen data community, don't know much about GIST, I will quickly mention that it's a network of 35 international organizations, regional organizations and training institutes, and national statistical offices who work together on statistical training, supporting national statistical offices on statistical capacity building, but also statistical literacy initiatives where NSOs have a role, in fact, in promoting statistical literacy across the society. You can scan the QR code or use this link to learn more about GIST. There are two products that are of particular relevance. One of them is this inventory of statistical literacy initiatives. Again, you can use this QR code or use the lengthy link to access it. If you have any initiatives to share, please contact us. But you can also explore what exists outside. It can inspire you for the kind of things you would like to do. And some of the initiatives have very hands-on practical materials that you can even adapt and reuse. So you can see they are organized by different target audiences and products. And the second platform I would like to mention is this gateway to learning on statistics and SDGs. Again, you can click on this QR code or go to the link, and it provides access to all relevant learning on data and statistics, in particular for SDGs provided by GIST members, but also other organizations. Now, on citizen data, I'm moving to the collaborative at this point. It's a very big group of very different types of stakeholders, from national statistical offices and international organizations who represent more official statistics community, to civil society organizations, international, local, national, and also those active at national level, and also national human rights institutions, academia, and different types of partners. You can see here pictures from various expert group meetings that we had together, working on what we called and what was presented last year for the first time to UN Statistical Commission. That's the Copenhagen Conceptual Framework on Citizen Data. To learn more about collaborative, again, you have the QR code that you can scan, and you can use the email address and the link below. Within the collaborative, as I mentioned, there are different actors, and it also has a small steering group composed of 10 partner agencies, and it's led by UN Statistics Division and International Civil Society Center. Very quickly, because we will be talking about that, I just wanted to mention there is a definition, operational definition in this framework on which the collaborative has been working. And there are perhaps two sort of key points about this definition. You will be able to read it afterwards, but it does place a strong focus on sufficient and meaningful participation of citizens in the data production and use at different stages, in fact, of the data value chain, as you can see. So there are these two dimensions at which the collaborative has been looking at. And also, there are different other things that you can find in the framework. Please use this QR code to read the whole of the framework, because there are different aspects. These are just some highlights. You can see there are principles of citizen data, and some of you will recognize fundamental principles of official statistics. Maybe others who work on indigenous people will recognize data sovereignty, etc. But you can learn more also about enabling environment and the rest there. And my final point is maybe on NSOs, because if some of you are from national statistical offices, you can also learn on how to engage with citizen data. And it can be either integrated into official statistics, or it can be simply quality assured and complement official data. Or it can also exist, remain independent and outside of official statistics. But what's really important for today's conversations, NSOs can play this role of data stewards and trust brokers by establishing standards, quality standards, guidelines, methodologies, building capacity. And this really brings us to our point about statistical literacy and discussions, synergies between the two, statistical literacy and citizen data. Also, the framework defines skills and knowledge as one of the key elements of enabling environment. So I really encourage you to read it, and please hear the QR code again. And thank you very much. And we look forward to the presentations from the countries. My last point, just maybe to quickly see if there are other collaborative members in the meeting today, if they would like just to flag that they are here, because I think their participation will be very crucial also in the discussion. I don't know if colleagues from any of the steering group members are here today or any others. You can also write in the chat afterwards. Yeah. I think I'm finished with my presentation, Pedro.
Okay, thank you, Elena. I think that Bianca is already here. Bianca, in case you are, okay, so you are, I'm going to give you the floor to make the introduction of the presenters, right? Okay, we can hear you. So maybe in the next opportunity. So Juliet, the floor is yours. You may share your screen in case you need.
Thank you, Pedro and Elena, for this introduction, and thank you for also inviting us to the GROW seminar to present our experience. I am sharing my screen now. I hope you can see my presentation. I will like to start by defining why this is important for us as a national statistical system and enlighten our approach to understanding citizen data and promoting its implementation in our context. So we have three pillars that supports this agenda. The first is our statistical law. Our statistical law, the 2023-35, submitted in October of the 2023, established the principle of inclusion as mandatory. Based on that, statistical production should consider and respect our country's diversity and the characteristics of different population groups, aiming to make visible the living condition of those facing violation of rights or exclusion and support the development of target public policies to promote a real and effective equality in our country. So it's in our law, and we need to foster the implementation of the inclusion principle by all the statistical producers. The second pillar is our concept of statistical culture. We define statistical culture as the capacity to interpret, and use the statistical information by citizens and institutions to form their opinions, participate in public debate and decision making on issues that concern the community at large. So we also have this conceptual framework that establish what is the statistical culture that also we need to foster. And the third pillar of this agenda is our national statistical plan for the period 2023 to 2027 that includes several goals, including the one to develop a document of recommendation and best practices, guidelines, and mechanisms to ensure the participation of citizens around the data value chains. So to accomplish this, we are developing a quality and regulatory framework for citizen data in Colombia. So this is the reason why this is important, but to be coherent with all these purposes, we need to connect with different stakeholders in our data ecosystem. So how we had commenced to build a relationship with civil society organizations, because even though they are part of our data ecosystem, we don't have until this moment a close relationship with civil society to understand where they are doing. So we are part of the UN Collaborative on Citizen Data and the 2023 and participate in the first version of the Copenhagen framework. We also have reviewed the international practices around citizen data for different countries, African countries, Canada, and so on. And thanks to a South-South cooperation project that we have supported by the Presidential Agency of Cooperation, the APC, and the support of GPSDD, we have the opportunity to know and learn from the cases of Kenya and Ghana. I have the opportunity to meet with all and the Open Institute and learn a lot about the things that are doing in Kenya, and this really inspired us to foster a very specific actions in our country. Two actions. The first, the inventory of civil society organizations in our country to identify which ones are working with data. And the second action, the workshops. We have been developing several workshops that we call Data in Action, connecting with citizens through data. As part of the workshops, we present the Copenhagen framework, our roadmap for his implementation in Colombia, and the data value chains is based on the GSVPN model in order to get agreements with civil society to establish in which phases steps of this statistical production we need to ensure the engagement of citizens. So this was the main purpose of our workshops. In terms of the inventory, we have mapped around more than 100 civil society organizations and identified that 73 of them are working with data in topics that are environmental issues, about social welfare, gender focus, or diverse population, and they are involving or ensuring the participation of citizens in phases of the statistical process, like the collection of data, analysis, and dissemination. We also have learned about this through this inventory that the CSOs are using data to increase public understanding and awareness, mobilizing action and empowering local communities, and also to respond to the data needs of groups or communities that not feel represented by the data that is actually available in their national or local ecosystems. So in terms of the workshops, thanks to this inventory, we have connected with civil CSOs and invited them to participate in these workshops to strengthen the data ecosystem in Colombia, as I was mentioned before, to present the new framework of the citizen data. But a really important topic that we learned is that there are already happening initiatives that with engagement of citizens in our context. They are already doing this. So we need to understand how they are doing it and to what are their needs in terms of the capacities that they need to strengthen to do it in a way that we also can benefit from those initiatives from the perspective of our national statistical system. So we have made 4 workshops, not only in Bogota. We are trying to go to the cities like Cali, like Medellin, and work closely with the CSOs in a specific context in order to learn about particularities and realities that are facing in the territorial level also. We have having a good participation of CSOs, around 14 organizations per workshop, so that as has been an important part of the initiatives that we are executing by the moment. These actions, as I was mentioned, has allowed us to understand the capacity needs of the organizations and the things that they need to strengthen to use data in a proper way. So for that reason, we have promote the participation of citizens and CSOs in our virtual courses. We have around 15 courses on statistical matters that we offer through all the year in topics like statistical productions, generation of indicators, the ethical component of the statistical production. So we have several courses also about, for example, the inclusion of specific focus like gender, like a diverse populations and among others. So we have been promoting the participation since 2023 of citizens and CSOs on those courses, and we have observed an important increase in the participation. We passed from 1,000 participants to 3,000 to 4,000 certificates, people that finally complete all the courses and that had the certificates to ensure that they have this new knowledge with them. So we see that, for example, citizens have the 18% of participation in all the certificates participants, but we also have academy with an important participation and civil society organizations with around 2% of the participants. And the other action that I want to focus is that we generate a site in our National Statistical System web page on citizen data. So we have here all the contents, videos, and presentations of the workshops. We also include here all the toolbox with presents, for example, our guidelines to generate a statistical production, to ensure the inclusion of differential and intersectional approach, all the training plan that I was mentioned before, the courses, the workshops, and for example, our system of standardized concepts so they get familiar with the way that statistics is being produced, and they also benefit from these tools to enrich their initiatives that are developing. In terms of the next steps, I think that we are starting this agenda. This is going to take us several years. We are learning. We are in the next week. We are going to have this workshop with the collaborative citizen data here in Bogota, and we'll have the opportunity to have the participation of several actors in our data ecosystem, including civil society organizations, so they can hear firsthand what this is about and start to implementing this framework in their initiatives. But the next steps are also related with piloting. We need to have more applications in which we have the leadership of the National Statistical Office, for example, to provide information to web applications with engagement of citizens on topics that are hard to measure from the traditional sources like discrimination. And we have this pilot project that we are going to execute in the first semester of this year about the measuring of the SDG on discrimination, perception of discrimination. But also we want to continue the workshops with civil society, not only in Bogota, but as I was mentioned before, the importance to go to the territories and to work close with the organizations that are already there. And we are planning to launch the methodological guide that we are using for the workshops in order to foster that other actors analyze from the National Statistical System and the territorial level could use this methodological guidance to implement by their own in an autonomous way the workshops, so we can also promote that this is not something that should be led by the statistical office, but also should be developed by the organizations and other actors of the system. So I think that I was already mentioned the courses, the important to create a specific course around citizen data that complies the key ideas of the framework, our roadmap, and the possibility to have this through a virtual course in order to facilitate the deployment of this conceptual framework to all the data ecosystem. And finally, our main goal is to have a first version this year with our regulatory framework for citizen data to Colombia. So I think those are the main ideas that I want to share with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Juliet, for this fantastic presentation and give us a very good flavor about what you're doing in Colombia in terms of citizen data, including these regulatory frameworks. Thank you for that. So we are going to postpone the questions and answers for the second after the second presentation, and the floor will be given at that time to Elena again, because she will be the discussant, and we are going to have this time also for questions and answers. So now I'm going to pass the floor to Al Keggs. So Al, you are the founding director and executive director also at Open Institute Africa. So so the floor is yours, and thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me at this conversation. I'm very excited about this conversation right now because I think it is extremely timely. The question of data now is we're talking about data at a time when it's very sensitive globally, because we are seeing what is happening in the US. We are also seeing signals that about what is happening in other countries, even here in Africa, that might be retrogressive in terms of data. And so I think we are having such conversations at a very good time. My name is Al Kags. I'm the executive director, as you heard, at the Open Institute. And the Open Institute is an organization that works in Africa and that does two main things. One is that we work with governments to enhance responsiveness using data. So we try and figure out what are the tools, what are the policies, what are the knowledge that governments might need so that they can be more responsive to the needs of the citizens. But on the other side, what we also do is that we promote active citizenship, again using data. And what we do there is that we work on citizen-generated data together with citizens so that they can have citizen agency to represent themselves on whatever issues are important to them. When we started this work, and I think what I wanted to contribute here today is a story rather than a presentation. I oscillated a bit in terms of whether I wanted to do a presentation or whether I just want to tell a story, and I eventually came up, decided that it's a good thing to tell a story. We started working on citizen-generated data when we met Chief Francis Kariuki, who in Kenya, the lowest administrative office is that of a chief. A chief is responsible essentially for a group of villages, so it's a very small jurisdiction. And when we met him and we had conversations with him, this is in 2015, just after the SDGs were promulgated, and we were having this conversation about, so how does data help, and how can it help him in his own community to improve lives? And we said, well, you can collect your own data and you can make arguments, or you can have your community collect the data. And so we started to explore what citizen-generated data could be and could do. We went and met with the community, and we were meeting these communities in church, in the local churches, in the local schools. And they have this functional organization within the community called the Nyumba Kumi, which is essentially a group of elders within the community. So we went and met them, and we said to them, well, this is what the SDGs are. This is what data is. And even the way that we were training them on what data is was very simplistic, because we were saying, well, do you have young women here who have gone to university and who need jobs? They say, yes. They say, how many? They say, many. Say, okay, I'm going to write you a check, written many, so that you can help those women. And everybody will be, yelling and saying, well, you can't write a check, many. And so I said, if you want me to write a number, then you have to give me a number so that it is commensurate. So if you want resources, then you have to be specific in terms of how much it is that you want. As they came to understand data, they became interested enough to actually go ahead and collect data from their community. So they went and collected data from almost more than 15,000 households in their community about everything that they were interested in. They created the questionnaire, and we sort of helped them with the technical organization of the questionnaire, and they themselves went to every single household and collected this data. Statisticians would have objections to this because it is not entirely scientific. But when the citizens then came back to look at this data, they realized a couple of things that were important. Number one, the places where insecurity, or the households where insecurity was most rampant, seem to be households that are led by women. So those households were targeted by thieves and by, for petty theft and so on. And so because they have a community patrol system or community policing system, they then started to pay more attention to those households because of the fact that the data is showing that those households were a little more targeted for those kind of theft. Number two, they realized that petty theft had spikes at certain times of the year. And it turned out that the times when petty theft, the theft of chicken, the theft of clothes on the line and that sort of thing, was happening during the time when schools were being opened. Now, the entire time they had been saying that this petty theft is being done by the drunken, jobless boys in the village. But now they are discovering, using the data, that actually it might actually be parents who are doing this because they're looking for money to go and take their children back to school. So that was another intervention that they were able to think about. The most important intervention that we saw them do was that we saw them call the governor, which is the senior most person. It's like the governor in the States. and basically tell him that based on this data, we have realized we need a hospital here in our community. And what happened is that the governor said, we'll look into it. And they said, well, we'll look into your votes as well, if you're going to be looking into this. So he says, well, the problem is that we don't have the money. One of the things that we have trained the community is to look at 4 things: the Constitution of Kenya, to look at the Constitution of Kenya, to look at the county plans for 5 years, and to look at the annual budget of the county, as well as whatever religious book they like to read, to have those next to their bed. And so they had already read, the budgets, and somebody raised their hand and said, Governor, excuse me, you actually already have the budgets for that hospital for the last 2 years. And the governor went back and talked to his people on this is literally happening live. He goes back and he's talking to his people, and then he comes back and says, actually, the thing is, we have the money to build the place, but we don't have the money to buy the land. Somebody else raises a hand and says, you have land that is yours, that is there, that is community land. You're not using it. Why don't you put the dispensary there? Long and the short of it is, a year later, the dispensary was opened. That level of citizen agency is evidence for us that there is still value in citizen-generated data beyond statistics. And so when we presented it to statisticians at the Africa meeting that year, we were told, well, you are having, that was a lucky thing. That was a lucky community. And so we expanded it, and we went and met with even larger communities, and same kind of things were happening where citizen-generated data was having real-life impact. Fast forward to around 2020, 2021, thereabouts, we started engaging with KNBS, who have been phenomenal in terms of providing leadership in trying to figure out how does citizen-generated data then come and help statistics. How do we make sure that it is collected in such a way that it is reasonably acceptable for a statistician to look at, even while it is being mainly useful for the community? And it is accepted that citizen-generated data is first and foremost expected to be useful by the citizen themselves. And then after that, it can be useful to other people because of the fact that it's not national, it may not be scientifically representative and all of these things. But it does provide very useful insight that can be useful to provide color to a statistician's statistics. In the last couple of years, we have seen KNBS provide guidelines on how citizen-generated data, if you do want it to be part of the government's data, these are the guidelines to follow. They have published a criteria that they would be that would enable them to look at my citizen-generated data and see whether or not they can include in national statistics and so on. And we have started to have engagements with people from different countries, including Ghana, including Tanzania and others, to say we have to move away from just statistical thinking when we are thinking about development, and we have to think about data systems. Data systems take statistics and citizen-generated data and data from all other sources and put those into context so that then development outcomes have more color. And so this is the sort of thing that we are advancing now. And I think that especially now in the current circumstances where we are at, this is the most important direction that we shall go. The final thing I wanted to share is that in this last 3-4 months, we have been building a MOOC together with a collaborative on citizen data. We've been building an online course on the collaborative itself so that people can be able to learn about it. But one of the things that we are really looking forward to, and anybody who is here, please do email me if you have ideas, is that we really are looking forward to having stories that provide color to the online course so that people are not just getting technical information, but they have examples from different places of what they can do with it. So in case you have ideas about citizen data doing something interesting, please do email me. My email address is alcags@openinstitute.africa. Please email me at any point, and we shall see how we can help out. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I look forward to more engagement.
Thank you all for this also fantastic introduction of what you're doing there in terms of citizen data. And those examples are very meaningful for the African reality. And thank you for sharing them with us. So maybe we also need some examples about real citizen data, and maybe they will come up during the discussion that we're going to do now. So back to you, Elena, to start with that. Or do you think that we should start first with the questions and answers?
I think we should start with the questions and answers.
Okay, and then do make the final discussion. Okay. Thank you. So the floor is open now for the questions and answers. Wants to be the first? Or if you want just to share something related to citizen data, maybe some examples in your country, so please go ahead. Let me see that, because I think that we have something here. No, that is something that Elena just shared. So I can maybe start with a question, or maybe sharing something related to what we're doing in my office in Statistics Portugal. We have an area named Stats Lab, where we put all the information that is not still official, considered as official statistics. So the Stats Lab is, if you just go to ene.pt, you will find it there. So Stats Lab is exactly what, well, not exactly, but very similar to what Eurostat calls the experimental statistics. So this is something that we are, it's still not considered as official statistics, but we are trying to converge into a product that has that official stamp. We don't have specifically citizen data there, but we have some data that came from companies. For example, for the travelings, the daily routes from citizen that have been shared there during the COVID-19. Well, this is just an example. And so maybe I could take the opportunity to ask Juliet if you are considering to do something similar in DANE.
Yes, in fact, we have, okay, as DANE producer, I was talking about DANE as coordinator of the National Statistical System and how we are planning to deploy this new framework to foster this kind of initiatives, acknowledging that for some, for example, SDGs and disaggregations as the territorial level, it's hard to get information from traditional sources like administrative records and censuses and surveys. So for that reason, we know that citizen data could be provide additional information gathered by citizens that could enrich, for example, the measurement of topics that are hard to measure through surveys as discrimination. So for that reason, we want to have this pilot this year using web applications, not only to capture data about this phenomena, but also to promote the awareness about the situation of discrimination in our country. Yes, because most of the time with the surveys, sometimes it's not possible to generate that awareness during using the traditional methods. So we use this kind of, the use of social media, the use of news tool could help us to promote the conversation about these topics, and also ensure that people gets the incentive to report these situations and to talk about this and to collect data that could also help to visualize these situations in terms of the SDG indicators. And we have learned, for example, from civil society organizations that are working a lot on topics that are hard to measure, like for example, violence, with gender violence, right? Because we don't have at the moment a survey or a statistical production to generate data about this. So this is an important topic for society, and as Al was mentioned, they need to generate their capacities to promote changes in order to ensure, for example, safe environment for women in our country. So this gap that exists between the statistical, the official statistics and the topics that matter for communities and is being covered by these kind of initiatives. So we are planning to foster the use of web applications as a way to open about these topics that are hard to measure, as I was mentioned, and could also present it to the statistical system through these initiatives that you mentioned, like experimental statistics, because we also have experimental statistics, but at the moment had been more around the use of new technologies like satellite images and everything, and new methodologies based on big data and everything to produce statistics. But now we think that the use of citizen data could also support a new agenda of experimental statistics, ensuring this engagement of citizens. So yes.
Thank you, Juliet. I don't know, Al. Okay, Al, yes, please go ahead.
So I just wanted to add to that and tell yet another story. Just this morning, I received a call from one of our community members. So we have a space called Maono Space, which is a co-working space for community-based organizations that work in Kilifi. Essentially, the model is that we realize that a lot of community-based organizations, regardless of where they are, whether it's in Latin America or it's in different parts of Africa, they lack the wherewithal to have a good space to work with, good internet, and so on and so forth, especially in rural and remote areas. And so what we are doing is that we're providing four things. We're providing the space, we're providing technical support, like technical services like accounting and technology and so on. We're providing small grants, and most importantly, we provide with a network. Anyway, one of those organizations gave me a call today, and they said that they are planning to, based on what has happened with USAID, one of the impacts that they're seeing in their community is that the HIV clinics that were providing urgent care to HIV patients have closed down in their communities. But now that data is not yet available and being collected, and our statistical office is not yet equipped to go out and collect that data quickly. So they wanted to go as community-based organizations and map out all of these organizations, including the ones that were providing services to LGBTQ folks who are, cannot come out. They had their own private clinics, so to speak. Private to mean that they were not known by everybody, so that they had a safe space. So what they're doing is that they're going to those spaces and mapping all of them out and figuring out how many of them still have medications, how long those medications are for, how many are still open and how many have closed down, what kind of services are they now able to offer when they have no funding, and all of these things, so that then they can publish it from their community. Now, for the statisticians and the data practitioners here, I think we all can agree that that is crucial information for us to be able to provide evidence as to the impact and to the gap that has been created by the closure of USAID. So these sort of things, the thing about citizen-generated data and how it aids statistical thinking is that it supports the ability of having data quickly in a way that we can build evidence even before we get very scientific about it, in a way that we allow ourselves to now know what the direction of things are.
Thank you, Al, for these very useful insights of real things real things that are really happening. So I don't know if you want to just to enter the discussion, please raise your hand or just open your microphone. So Bianca, I don't know, are you here?
I was,
yes, okay.
yeah, I just wanted to say hello to all, Juliet and Elena. Unfortunately, my team's blocked in a way that never happened before. Well, anyways, I was able to hear both of you speaking. So I guess the webinar was really successful, but I can see the recording later. Okay, anyways, congratulations. Sorry for that.
No, you are always welcome. So just to inform that Bianca was supposed to be the, the host of the seminar, but for technical reasons, as you saw. But you are here, that's what's most important. So before passing the word to Elena, let me just say that this topic of citizen science is sometimes also related to another topic that sometimes we, well, they are both very well connected, which is citizen science. So there are many initiatives. I remember that in one of the United Nations World Data Forum, there was a session also on this topic, and some participants referred to the Citizen Science Hub. So there are, for example, some initiatives for preventing the plastic pollution, for example, and that gather data based on some clubs that you can, create in secondary schools or in the early years of the university or even in the basic school years. So citizen science is also another way of doing this in schools, which can raise then the opportunities of, creating very good citizen data that in the future, who knows, can be official statistics data. So I don't see any hands raised so far. So maybe, okay, so Bianca just send just shared another link. So maybe back to you, Elena, to make the wrap up and the discussion. You still have 8 minutes to go.
So yes, thank you very much, Pedro. I think we were also hoping maybe to hear from some of the participants if there are any thoughts, but it looks like no one wants
they are
to
very
volunteer
shy
maybe
today.
Yeah, but please feel free to use the chat function if it works for you. For some reason it doesn't work for me. But I use the questions and answers function in case there is an issue at your end. Perhaps maybe just to say, going back firstly to what Pedro said in terms of terminology, there are indeed different terms that you may have heard or may have encountered or were engaged in their work, like citizen science, community-based monitoring, participatory action research, participatory mapping. In the context of Earth observations, you can also use not only satellite imagery, but also citizen volunteer contributions. So there are these different citizen-generated data. The idea of the conceptual framework is to really offer an inclusive term that will encompass all these different types of citizen-related data, as long as they sort of meet some of the key criteria, as I mentioned, the ones related to sufficient and meaningful participation, with this idea that the ultimate sort of level is, indeed, there are different types, as we've heard. For example, Alkak was talking about examples of civic action, where these are really action that comes from the community for the purposes of the community, and it's not necessarily related to official statistics, but it's also about agency and making sure that, as Juliet was saying, things that are really important for the community, they count and they can be measured, and they can be taken into account in budgeting and policy, also local level policy decisions. And then, of course, there are different other types where you may find, for example, civic-driven initiatives, but where national statistical offices or other partners are involved. So they are sort of co-created, and where also maybe National Statistical Office can provide more advice on, for example, on sampling and other sort of professional standards-related aspects when it comes to data production. And then you may have examples where initiatives come more from National Statistical Office or other partners. It can be, for example, academia, etc. But they involve sufficient level of meaningful participation from citizens. So I think all these aspects are sort of important. And so there is this idea also about empowerment and agency behind. And I think what was also interesting, I think maybe to hear that in a way you empower when you engage in citizen data initiatives, maybe sometimes you will have a role of educator in some cases. You empower communities and people in different ways. You empower them by improving their knowledge and skills when it comes to data, but you also empower them to advocate and achieve improvements, hold governments accountable, and achieve improvements when it comes to development outcomes. So I think maybe also just to say, as a discussant, I think the example also from Juliet is very interesting because there is this global level work by a number of, by the whole collaborative, and also led by the steering group composed of 10 agencies that includes 3 United Nations agencies, but also many other organizations, including civil society. There is one national human rights institution, stakeholder group on disability, etc. And so we came within this steering group, we also came together to share some of the knowledge and practices we knew from our work with other stakeholders. And then through the collaborative, we managed to engage much more to be able to develop this conceptual framework in a very participatory manner. And then also it's also interesting to see now how it's being actually practiced and rolled out by countries at the national level by adapting it to the national needs, by engaging national stakeholders, civil society organizations to actually use it as an inspiration and then co-create their own processes, their own training materials, their own methodologies, etc. So I think it's an inspiring example, and we hope to be able to see more of those. And I hope that some of the examples that come from Juliet could make the course that ALCAC is developing also gaining more in color, as you were saying. And then also, I saw some names in the group today. I don't know, webinar participants were a bit shy, but I know them from previous collaborations on statistical literacy, and I think they may also have interesting examples to share. So please do reach out to ALCAC to share your examples. I think these are a few reflections. And again, I would just like to encourage everyone to consult the document that we have shared when it comes to the conceptual framework. And this may create an appetite from you to join the collaborative as well on citizen data. And maybe some of you would like to join the statistical literacy task team of GIST if you have not done so yet.
Yeah, for the purpose, you can contact Elena directly, or then Bianca or myself. So maybe we can also share our emails. This is my email, and maybe also Bianca's. Bianca, can you please share your email? I don't know you by heart, so.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so it's about to. We are about to finish the webinar today. So thank you all for being here. I think we had a very good group. participating or just listening and just trying to learn a little bit about this concept of citizen data. Thank you, Juliet and Al, for accepting this invitation. We hope to have more initiatives with you, and that maybe we can also get involved with the citizen data initiatives all around the world that may, of course, be very good ideas to produce data that we need, transparent data and real data. Thank you also, Elena. Thank you, Bianca. And thank you all for your participation. The next webinar will be announced soon. Right, Bianca?
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Have a nice day.